All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is just past noon. Thank you for joining the conversation. This is our monthly Grow Business Speaker event. We have a wonderful speaker lined up with us today, and we're so excited to have him share some interesting stories about what it takes to retain great talent in companies. And before we get to Gary Watts, I want to share with you real briefly what we're doing here. My name is Rashu Mahalha. I am the program architect organizer for Growth in the Rural Ozarks. Grow is a program that's been designed, developed to help rural communities in Missouri design programs, activate programs that can create economic progress, community progress, workforce progress. It's really a leadership program that's helping communities find their North Star and march towards that North Star. So it's a pleasure to meet you. This is a business speaker event that we invite incredible speakers from the region, across the country, to come in and share their insights with our local businesses. I want to begin by thanking our chambers of commerce and Grow community leaders in our various Grow programs. So specifically, I want to thank the team in Ashgrove who's joining us today, Ronessa Williams there. In Aurora, the chamber leader, Shannon Walker. In Buffalo, Tanya Watson. In Eldon, Aaron Rohr and Mary O'Reither. And Herman, Melissa Lensing. So thank you to all the chamber leaders for your continued leadership and support. We also want to let you know that if you've missed any of the programs of the past, I will share with you really briefly that you can connect with old programming. I'll show you where that's at. 1 second. So you can find old programming at business911.org. You just click on Grow Missouri, and it will take you to this page that has all of our previous recordings. Really great content here that hopefully can be helpful to you. Everything from how to access COVID, CARES Act dollars as a small business leader, marketing strategies, HR strategies, business growth strategies, etc. So hopefully that's of help. And if any of you are interested in learning more about the Grow program, you can go to growozarks.org. That's a platform that we have where every town has an area that highlights some of the work that's going on there. So hopefully that's something that you can find helpful. All right, so with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker today. Again, Gary Watts is just an incredible individual. I had a chance to speak with him briefly, get to know what Gary does, who he is. Fascinating individual. An interesting story that Gary shared was how a few years ago, more than a few years ago, Gary went through the process of adopting a child, his child from China, and just all the process that they went through. He's a professional who's just got incredible experiences. You name the industries he's worked in, you name the type and area of the business he's worked in it, everything from marketing to logistics to operations, a lot of operations background for businesses here in the US and also that have operating units beyond the US. And so he's just Gary has a wealth of information, but I'd say, you can have great experiences, great personal life. And I think the third leg of the stool, Gary's just a really enthusiastic, passionate, engaging individual and a leader. So in speaking with him, it really came across, how much he has insights and knowledge he's accumulated. And so we're just so happy that Gary has agreed to join us today and share his thoughts and insights with us. So as we always do, we'll invite Gary to share his thoughts. If you're listening to us on Zoom, if you're listening to us on one of the Facebook platforms, please feel free to type your questions in. We will try to get to them all today. If we don't get to them today, we will certainly keep connecting with Gary and getting those answers. So without further ado, I want to invite Gary Watts. Gary, welcome, General Manager of Pretium Packaging. Welcome, sir.
All right, well, thank you so much. Very gracious introduction. I think I liked me even more after you introduced me there. That was pretty nice. But as you noted, I've had a lot of experience in business and such as that. But one of the biggest thing I found in everything I've done, lots of turnaround management, business recovery plans and stuff like that. But after it's all said and done, it comes down to people. Like I said, often they'll say, how come in all these industries, how can you take one thing from the other and be able to apply it? And, but everything you do, you have people involved. And so if you learn how to have faith in them, work with them, create environments that they can thrive and prosper, you end up doing pretty good. And so that's where my passion lies, is in mentoring, connections, engagement. And so I try to, I do mostly good, but sometimes I don't. And but that's just part of human nature. But being humble and coming back to it is critical. So that's one of the reasons why when we talk about the employee retention and stuff like that, it's not just so much about tricks on how to keep people, but it's how do you make it a place that nobody wants to leave. And and it's not all about kumbaya and let's have group hugs and skip through a field of daisies. It's really people like to thrive. They want to be able to do well in their profession. And so what do we got to do to give them an environment that we reap those benefits? So with that, I'll share my screen and pull up. I've got a few things here. I always like being able to, whoops, wrong button there. I like having PowerPoints and such as that, but also sometimes hate the dependency that we have on them. But I can't see past my computer there. All right, can you see my screen? All right, so let me.
We can.
All right, so it looks like it's working. All right. So I kind of titled it this just because, a little tongue in cheek, but we always find sometimes the people that we hire and we're just like, okay, we got them, and then we lose them. And,
Gary,
yes.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna ask. We're having a little bit of technical issue. If you can just give us one. I see we are live on Herman's Facebook page. Shannon, are you seeing this the presentation on your Facebook page now?
I am not, and I wonder if it's because I'm logged in that others.
Okay, well, why don't we keep going? I'm not sure exactly what's happening, and then we can repost it on your site after the event's done. Would that work,
Okay.
Shannon?
Yep,
Okay,
that'll work.
great. Gary, sorry for the interruption. Please go ahead.
No problem. No, I'm flexible. So the main thing, like I said, as we start talking about, how do we, once we have our best and brightest, how do we keep them? How do we make this their home? And again, it's I always say taking care of your people. If you're altruistic and you want to do things that make you feel good, taking care of your people is the right thing to do. And if you're just greedy and want to make a whole lot of money, taking care of your people is the right thing to do. Because all of those things to optimize and be most profitable is going to come into how you take care of your folks. And so when I'm looking here, say specifically at, say for our area, looking at the Herman area, right now, with COVID and all the things like that, there's so much, there's a perception that we have all these people that's unemployed and they're needing work. How do we get there? But when you look at Missouri currently, the February numbers were at 4.2%. Yeah, we have a lot of people that's unemployed with new claims and stuff. But when you look at the overall unemployment rate, we're at 4.2%. Gasconade County, which is here for where Herman is at 4.7%. And traditionally, by pretty much all the metrics that you see out there, if you're between 4 and 6%, that's pretty much considered that you're fully employed for that market. And which means that it's went from having many available workers to that pool has gotten very restricted. And sometimes when you're fishing being in a rural town that's far enough away from the big city that you can't hardly draw from there, it's a pretty small pond that we're all competing over trying to get people. So that's where you look at. It makes it even when you're in a full employment situation. it's hard to get people, which makes it so much more critical that you keep the ones that you have. And that's where that competition, it's so fierce. We have, you can look at overall metrics on what, you can see how things are going in other markets and stuff, but, and you always hear people say people are our greatest asset. And that I always say it's more of a bumper sticker, but do we really embrace that? You'll hear it in all types of, if you go to presentations and places, or if you call in consultants, everybody will say that. But what does it really mean? And that's where, kind of as I say here, if you're a big business where you can absorb it, if you're not taking care of your people, it's going to cost you money. But if you're a small business, it may drive you out of business. Not having the right people or not having the right quantity of people. So the worst thing, I had one guy told me one time, he said if you treat your employees like they're disposable, then you're not going to have a whole lot of disposable income for long. Because and you can see that in many of our markets. We've had, even here in Herman, some businesses struggle and going under, or struggling to take on new business so they could take advantage of new markets, just because they can't hire. And it doesn't matter if you're in construction or retail or bed and breakfasts and things like that. We're all struggling, and I'm in manufacturing, and it's tough. It's a hard market to get people. So that's why we try to focus on what do we've got to do to make sure we're keeping the ones that we have. And often, like when it's easy to look and say, you think that you can't afford to spend money on keeping your people, but do you really realize how much it's costing you to lose people? There's many markets and businesses where you have that first 30, 60, 90 days, there's a churn. There's always a new face. I know I went to one business I was doing a turnaround on, and I heard some hourly employees telling the new hire, says, well, I don't even want to know your name for 30 days. If you make it after that, tell me your name. That probably didn't make that person feel it's like, oh my God, how'd I end up here? So again, you start that unraveling right out of the gate. But when you start looking at it, depending on the level of position, even if you're just making $8 an hour, the cost for replacing that person between the soft and the hard costs ends up being about $5,000. And so that's a good way to use and say, what does it take to replace that person? You've been training them for 2 months. They're just not getting up. The first 30 days, usually employee costs you money because they're just learning. Once they get some skills and they're making you money, and then you lose them, it starts being impactful. And again, the longer they've been there and you lose that wealth of knowledge and experience, the more impactful they are when they go. And so often, we can be a little bit self-centered and think, well, if they lost me, it would cost them a whole lot of money. But you can go to the your lowest position in your business, and losing them is impactful. So if it's impactful, then that means they have value. And regardless of what you put a dollar to that value, they are a value-added component of your business. So when you start thinking about why should I invest in it, and investment doesn't always mean dollars and cents either. Your personal time, your energy, your focus, those often are the resources that we find that we're the most stingy of. Making a decision on spending dollars and cents is kind of easy to come up with. But if I'm going to say I've got to commit to treating people better, that means I'm looking at me and being critical of myself, and it's a little hard for people to be objective when it comes to the mirror. But you got to be able to do the right things there. I know this is a little bit of an eye strainer, but one of the things, again, I've been in 11 different plants that my job was to come in was to either save the business or close it, and I've been pretty blessed that out of the 11, we only closed one of them. And but when you start looking at reasons why people leave, reasons you have turnover, reasons that people don't want to be here anymore, the one you hear all the time, it's like, well, they're probably going for money, or our pay here isn't good enough. But when pay actually, and you can look at many surveys by different people, but about the highest that pay ranks is number 5, and it's usually actually around number 7 as to the reason somebody will quit their job. And so when you start looking at that, you could throw money at it. If it's truly a position that's out of market range, sometimes you can do some things to correct that. But if you're having a lot of turnover in your business, pay is always one of them. But if that's the only thing you're thinking of, then that's not going to result. It's not going to end up with the results that you're looking for. So we're going to talk through some of the other items on here. I'm not going to run down through here, but one of the most important things I note out of all of these, depending on which ones you're looking at, you got either 15 or 10 top drivers. But when you kind of look here, all the ones with a gold star are the ones that, as an employer, you have an opportunity to either that you are either the primary driver or at minimum a great influence on that driver for turnover. So it's easy to blame the people on why they leave, or that, hey, I keep hiring people and they don't know how to do their job and now I'm firing them. There's all types of reasons there, but 75% of the problem is us, as managers, as leaders, as business owners. And it's hard to admit that. But now that doesn't mean we're all bad, evil people and things like that. But it's just like your kids, when you're raising your kids, you do the best you can, but there's always certain parts you look back and say, well, I wish I'd done this differently, or could have done that. And hindsight is 20/20, but how do you take and apply that to the people that you still have as part of your business? And like I said, whether you're doing it on a small scale or a larger scale, the majority of the principles still apply when it comes to what do we want to do and how do you keep people and make them want to be here. I just hit the wrong button there. Here we go. So the first thing you do if you're trying to have the right folks is start right out of the gate. Hire the right people coming out. There's some of the big business philosophers and stuff like that. You hear them talk about hire slow, fire fast, or something. But really, once you have somebody in here, spend the time to do it right. If you're just going for warm bodies in your recruiting process, then you're probably going to end up with warm bodies. That doesn't mean be so selective that you can't find anybody, because often, no matter what it is, you're never going to find the perfect candidate. You're looking for something that can be formed, shaped, molded, trained, and developed, not somebody who is going to come in with all of those traits. But often you're looking for the people who have the most potential to gain the traits and experience and knowledge that you need them to. So look for those people and ability to see that. If you don't know how to do that, ask for help. I know, like the chamber is a good resource. Come and say, listen, hey, I'm just starting my business, or I've got a business, but I'm struggling. Somebody can help and talk, and they'll get you in touch with people like me or others. And again, for a hamburger and a cold beer, I'll pretty much, sell my soul. So that way we can get connected, share ideas, and help each other out. But again, when it comes to hiring, we have people with lots of skills and talents around that. But you got to make sure you're selecting and again, putting the right people in the right role. You don't want to hire somebody way above the position, way below the position. You're trying to get somebody who's within a certain range of what you're looking for in that position. So it keeps them engaged in what they're going to do there. And then when you come down to it, by and large, most people don't quit a job; they quit their boss. And what that means is that the person, and it's not the person, they're not quitting the CEO of the company. They're usually looking at their immediate boss or one level above that and saying how they treat me. When you talk about workplace culture, sometimes, we'll come up with all these grand schemes and quote people from business, empires or Gandhi or whoever it is. We're bringing up these big things, but when it comes to culture, usually one or two people deep are the ones that is the immediate culture for that person. That is what they experience. And so if you are not being an exceptional boss, then if you have toxic relationships with your folks, if you're treating them, if you're being dismissive, if you're not taking the time to listen, if you don't have enough humbleness to receive feedback, again, it's that that bull in a china shop, and where I'm going to whip everybody into shape. It's just not sustainable, and so that's where you start finding that. I had early in my career where I was a little more overbearing because I thought I was smarter than I actually am. And then as I started pulling people in, giving them the opportunity to shape the destiny of things, I started noticing a lot more results. And I was like, so I always say, if I'm the smartest guy in the room, we're in trouble. So that's where I look to see who are the people that's smarter than me, that's better than me, that's going to do the right things, and that doesn't mean that you're not aggressive on achieving the goals, but you're not leaving a wake behind you of people, broken hearts or negatively impacted careers and stuff like that. You want they're going to take you along with them to be able to be successful. And then, as much as you look at the boss, sometimes it's you start looking around. They talk about it takes a village, to raise a kid, but often when you start looking at dysfunctional work environments, sometimes the problem is all of us. It's like, okay, we don't have a good plan, we don't have a good strategy. I got Department A against Department B, but it's also where it's as managers, we'll complain about our employees in front of other employees, and you got to know that if they hear us talking about that, what are we saying behind their backs? We'll gripe about the company, or I got an axe to grind from 5 years ago when I didn't get to take that vacation or something like that, or I didn't get the raise I thought that I should have. All that kind of stuff. It's you rarely, in leadership roles or management roles, there's not neutrality, because you're either making positive contributions to the organization in regards to culture. If you're being neutral, that's actually a negative contribution. So you can either be slightly negative to greatly negative, but it starts taking credibility away from our leaders. And the part that really happens there that's even more impactful is all that complaining or that negativity or not doing all the things that it takes to have a functioning workforce. It starts to devalue our people. And if they don't believe that as leaders that we have value in them, then they'll either start to believe us or they just won't care. And again, all of those are going to start contributing to people that want to find a new place to work. As I said before, usually pay is number 5, number 7 on the list. But in this day and age, there's enough. You can always pay to get this super detailed wage survey and spend a couple $1,000s on it and stuff like that. But it's the internet, folks. We've got information at our fingertips, and you can get with a little bit of web searching and looking around and reaching out to organizations. And again, I've as I talk with Melissa, I've been in quite a few different chambers, and often we'll have wage data at the chamber for our members, and so that they can see what's going on in your state, your community. And so there's all types of resources to find out. And are you actually underpaying your folks? Now, sometimes you just may not have the money to pay them more. You might be small group, or you might have budget constraints. I'll use the example for where I'm at right now. When I got here, our starting salary for hourly employees was $9 an hour. Within the first 45 days, I raised that from 9 to 12, and now I've raised it from 12 to 15. And so you're saying, well, we went from 9 to 15, and with all that money, because it's about $100,000 per dollar for my labor force here, that it adds to the bottom line. And last year was our most profitable year. From output. So every hourly employee got a great bonus. The salaried people got a great bonus. And we added, all that money to the bottom line, or added to the expense side, but our profit was even more. But again, the plant performance is in such a way that it's like some of the best money we spent was giving everybody a raise. So that's just and again, that's not an isolated incident. I've seen that happen in many businesses, and I'm sure many of you have got your own stories to tell on how, when you invest in your people, it changes the dynamics of the business, and it changes your profit and loss statements as well. So again, but have a plan. You can't just throw money at it and hope something happens. But if you need to make some investments, look at it. And if you can't pay more money, then look at the timing when or what do you got to do to get there, and what's it going to take to if you have an underpaid workforce to improve upon that. So the other thing you look at is when you have folks that, when you talk about being bored and disengaged, the lack of interest that can become in a job, we all watch The Office and we laugh at it and stuff like that. And it's so funny because there's always elements of truth to what we're seeing on the screen when you have those employees who just aren't part of it. When you have the folks that are spending half their day trying to figure out how to get out of work versus how to actually do the work. And but again, as a leader of the organization, you can look and say, hey, they're lazy, or hey, they're not motivated. But remember, you're making a contribution to that. Because I always kind of bring it back to you as the manager, the leader, the boss, just because you have influence over your people, you have control over yourself. So if you're wanting to create change more rapidly, start with yourself, and then the other parts will start to catch up with it. But again, and there's techniques and things you can do when you have people bored and unchallenged. Get them to stretch a little bit. Put them on some projects that they wouldn't normally do, or shift them into work teams they don't normally work with. Or like I said, you can always think of these big grand stuff with big businesses, but sometimes in smaller businesses, it's I worked construction, I worked in maintenance when I was going through college, and we would rotate, who was hanging sheetrock, who was doing the finishing, who was doing taping, and we'd take turns with it, even down to, okay, it's your turn, you're picking up scraps. And because none of us wanted to be the garbage guy all day long. But I knew when it was my turn, I would do a good job at it, because the next time I was going to be finishing taping. So it's just stuff like that. You can take and mix things up within your workforce or within your direct employees. And again, I kind of talked on this, that lack of interest and is just, again, engage, get creative, and find ways to, and you don't have to do it on your own. Like I said, it's one of the things that I always talk about in courageous leadership is being able to have tough conversations. Some of the hardest conversations we need to have isn't about work performance. It's just to sit down and say, listen, you don't seem connected to your job. You want to talk to me about that? And then be patient enough to experience uncomfortable silence, because sometimes I'll sit there and it's like, I'm comfortable, I'll wait for a little bit. So listen, but we're going to have to engage in this. But we've got to have those conversations if we're going to be able to move forward. And again, it's not a therapy session. It's just really saying, here's what I'm needing out of this role. Here's what I'm getting. I believe you can be the person I want to have in that role, but we're not there right now. So what do we got to do to get there? So again, you can practice those active listening, being able to ask the probing questions. But most of the part that everybody can tell, if you're bluffing your way through it, people sniff that out. So just be earnest and sincere and work towards something common with your people. And on the growth and opportunities, sometimes, in big organizations, you'll have structured career pathing. You'll have programs where you're taking people in and training and development that could be a couple years, and it lays it all out. But often you don't have any of that. It's just like, okay, I've been doing this forever and I'm in a nowhere job and I'm going nowhere. And if you don't have ways to promote people and give them money for those new promotions, we all love doing that. It makes us feel good. But sometimes it's just saying, listen, what I always look at here is, we don't hire perfect employees, and we talk about developing them. But I always look at it as train your people to have the skills and the resume that you would love to hire. So if they right now don't have those things, okay, it's like, hey, I might send you to a class on Microsoft Office. I'm going to send you to maybe a class on Oracle, or I'm going to have you do other things that's going to bring you different skills. Some people, I'm a nerd, so I love statistics. I know I need therapy for it and stuff like that. But But that was a big part of my career, was learning how to become a Six Sigma black belt certified engineer and being able to apply that to work. But again, that had nothing to do with my degree. It's just because that's something I loved, and I had a company that would invest and let me do that. But there's all types of training opportunities out there that for $200 or $300 you send somebody out, they get expanded. I mean, I've had, for a lot of my international travels, I had numbers of people that I would sponsor for English second language and things like that, and that would it would bring a connection that we're willing to invest in them, not just for work, but as a person. We get value of it at work, but it also helped to change some of their lives. So those are things that you look at on those are growth and learning opportunities that, again, it's just not going to break the bank, but you can help to sponsor those things. And, I always talk about, we always have rules for a company and human resource policies and stuff. We have all these things. I always come back and say, I've got two rules, and it's trust and respect. Because if you got trust and respect with your folks, it takes care of about 99% of the problems. If you don't have trust and respect going both ways, then it doesn't allow you the opportunity to communicate, to collaborate. It doesn't allow you the opportunity to get feedback that you're missing, because trust us. I've been a leader and a manager and a plant manager and general manager and VP roles. And I'm not the perfect employee. There's things I'm really good at, and there's things I'm not good at. I just learned that people who would talk to me honestly and tell me my blind spots made us stronger. And so that's where I kind of look at from that trust standpoint is how do you go through and make it so that they feel connected to you, to the business, to the rest of the folks that are there. Because as much as they need trust in you as a leader, they need trust in the people to their left and right. And so what are you doing to build that? So again, those are items that's very critical to any relationship. And that's what work is. It's a relationship. And without it, it's often dysfunctional, and sometimes it's beyond that, and it's actually hurtful. When we look at work-life balance, is like, okay, we've all lived the life of COVID for a while now. So when it comes to working remotely and stuff like that, some of us had worked remotely before. Many people, it was the first time. And for some folks, they're finding they're actually better at working remotely than being at the office. So we have different roles and things like that. But those are opportunities to create flexibility in our workforce. But when you look at work-life balance, working from home is one thing, but how do you find out ways to there's only so many little league games you can miss before you start to resent it. And if every time I go, I'm going to get an attendance point for it, that's going to start leading to me getting written up and let go. Again, I'm going to look for something that's going to fit better, something closer to home or things like that. But so like you can't bend and break all the rules, but you got to listen to folks and you'll start finding out what their priorities are. And if you don't recognize some of those priorities, you can't accommodate everything, but you can accommodate some things. So like I said, just be thoughtful on how important people's lives are. I mean, I took probably a 3-step promotion or demotion backwards when I came here, but it's because I was gone 80-90% of the time and got tired of raising my son on FaceTime and being gone 5 to 7 days a week, 50 weeks a year. So that's one of the things you start seeing that you have other priorities in life, and how do you achieve what you want to do and manage those priorities. And we talk about when we talk about making people feel valued, I mean, there's all types of big programs out there and bonus programs, but one of the ones that is so simple is just an earnest thank you. And don't just walk by and say, thanks, good job. Okay, that's just driving by and throwing confetti. Hey, it's nice, gave everybody a smile, but it didn't mean anything. But if I came by and say, hey, I just want you to know that yesterday I saw you working on this. I went over and looked at it earlier. I saw you was having trouble, but you stuck it out. did a phenomenal job. It's quality work, and I was glad that she was working on it. So I just want to let you know that that I recognize what she's working on yesterday, and it turned out really well. I didn't give them a raise. It didn't cost me any money. It took, 20 seconds? I looked at them. I gauged them in the eye. I'm not going to stay until I make them uncomfortable. It's not going to be me hugging them until they, go to HR about me. But it was earnest. It was sincere. They recognized it. I knew them by name. I said, "Hey, Jim, this is what's going on." And again, those connection moments, you're planting seeds that's going to be, you're going to be able to harvest at some point. And don't just do it to placate people. If you're just walking up making a false or an insincere thank you, it's actually better to keep walking, because people sometimes they're skeptical when you say thank you, but if it's a BS, they can smell the BS a mile away. So be sincere about it. But in places where you can take and do formal recognitions and things like that, you don't want to embarrass people in front of others. But there are times, at certain points, it might be retirement, might be, hey, I just reached 5 years at the job, or engage people and let them know if people make smart ideas or contributions, give them credit for it. Don't steal it. Go up and say, hey, we got this going out here, or we had great sales results last month, and it's all because of this person over here. You need to give that credit away. And where you can give rewards, it doesn't have to be big things. We'll set goals for, hey, if you can hit 5 days of this on a production line, we'll take you to the 10 mil for lunch. It costs, $60-$70 to take people there. That's the best money you can spend, because it comes back to you. But anyway, those are things that you got to do to make sure that they know that you see that they make a difference for you. And and then when you get into, micromanaging is, it's my favorite thing I like to do. But if you've got enough time to, and a lot of time the micromanage comes back to the trust, because when we're micromanaging, sometimes it's because of control, sometimes it's because we've seen a period of poor performance. But again, if we're going to see people have opportunities to succeed, you're going to have to give them the opportunity to fail. And then when they do fail, they got to learn something. Don't let them fail so big that it's costs you $100,000. But it's going to be one of those things that when they do fumble the ball, if you're not going to kick them off the team. Now, I'm not going to give them a hug for fumbling the ball. But we'll come back and say, what would you have done different? What would you learn? I need to see this the next time I put you on an important project, that you're able to achieve this. Again, you're going to get into those things that sets clear expectations, clear follow through, clear understanding of actions versus results. But again, you're not going to micromanage anybody to success. If you got to have that much control, then that just means you should do it yourself. And again, for larger companies, again, I just threw this on here. This isn't one of the top one. This is way down in the bottom 5%. But there are things when you're trying to get competitive. If you're an emerging business, if you finally went from that to where you're doing more than breaking even, and you're getting into where you can start enjoying other things and provide benefits, then there's all types of things that you do. Some of them cost money directly. Some of them are indirect. But there's always a slew of different type of benefits that are out there that you can be creative about that would help your employees to find that this job is a very, very good job. So anyway, that hits on a lot of the things. We could set, there's some, sometimes when you're doing these, and I've done training where I'm doing turnarounds and stuff, this would be a couple 2-hour sessions for us to dive into it, how we're going to apply it. But it hits on some of the critical planks out there that's is important to people on how we're going to be able to be successful at things. But the thing too, like if you're on here, and for those that's going to be watching this later, if you're looking at how to improve employee retention, that's one of the first things that you're looking at it because it's now something that's important to you. And so you're starting on those next steps, and it's not easy. Running a business, being a leader, it's hard. Not everybody does it. And as I said, coming into this isn't about making everyone like you and group hugs, but it is about trust and respect, and being able to connect with people in a way that allows all of us to go in the same direction. And often when we start talking about a lot of these things that sound kind of soft and gooey, that doesn't mean that you're not aggressive to putting points on the board, driven, focused, tenacious. Those are all things that are critical to be successful in a business. And it doesn't matter if you're starting up your own shop from today, and it's the first time that you have brick and mortar, you're going into something, but you got to fight for it. But you can still fight with respect, trust, and engaging of your people. So that's what I always come back to is lead courageously, do the right things. And it's always amazing when people find out that they're leading well and treating their people well, that then your people are willing to follow you. The worst thing you can have as a leader was when you're, pushing hard, you get out there a mile down the road, you look behind you and you're standing by yourself. That's a pretty hollow feeling to see that you didn't bring the troops along with you. So anyway, that gives you some ideas or some of the thoughts that I have when it comes to retention. In each one of those are certain things you can do and tools and techniques on each of those different planks. But we'd be here all day trying to go through all of those. But anyway, just wanted to open it up to questions, feedback, comments, and see what maybe some of you have experienced in your journey trying to keep people and improve employee retention.
Gary, thank you so much. That was a wealth of information. We really appreciate it. Really, really great that you shared. I'd like to open it up to some of the folks that are on the call. Shannon, let me maybe ask you see if there are any questions that you have or the folks in Aurora have.
Wow. First of all, Gary, thank you very much. That was really super, super good. I used to be in management for a bank, a large bank, and one of our I guess you could say taglines that we used to use. Sorry, I have a train going by. Right. One of ours that we used to use was either you're coaching them up or you're coaching them out. So a lot of that, and now my phone's ringing. A lot of what you had said really kind of hit home. And I think at this point in time, the making people feel good and wanted is a huge deal. And I love some of the things that you said, about taking them to lunch. And if they're, even if you're just, patting them on the back, leaving them a note, doing, hey, you're doing a really great job. I think it means a lot to people.
First alert, Chief Meteorologist Ron Hurst. The new station alert has arrived for your area.
So now that maybe all the chaos is done in Aurora for a minute, for people who have smaller businesses, what would be some other effective ways that they could help retain their employees? Because I know we have another small business that's associated with the chamber, and they may not make quite as much money as the people down the road, but they have a little more flexibility. So maybe you could kind of touch on some other things that we could do to keep them happy and keep them working, because they're a really great team.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to smaller businesses, one of the challenges with a small business is you may not have all the resources of the big business, the talent or not the talent, but the expertise and the other people to help do the heavy lifting. But one of the advantages that you have is a much more direct connection with your whole team as a small business. And so a lot of times, you mentioned a little bit right there talking about the flexibility, work-life balance. But if I was trying to do retention in there, I would really focus on the listening aspect. Does the team members, you might only have 5 employees, but do they feel like that their contributions matter? Or do they feel like, I know, like I knew this one of our friends who, what he used to do is once a week they'd all have coffee, and that was the meeting, and it was their opportunity to feedback. Hey, what did you see this week? What's going on? What should we be doing different? Is there anything that, and it was, and again, this was a big burly guy, so he wasn't a Dr. Phil kind of moment. And sometimes they'd say something, it would just go in one ear and out the other. But every couple of times they'd say something, he's like, oh man, you're right. And when they'd see him take action on that one item, it bought him miles. So that's where I kind of look at is that when we talk about connection, you're not just sitting there understanding that each of your employees are seeing a part of your business more intimately than you, and they have thoughts and ideas on what would make that better. Not so much easier. It's not like, hey, I'm gonna do this here so you can play Fortnite on your phone. But what are the things where they've made contributions that you recognize and said, I don't have a whole lot, but I think that's worth doing. So anyway, that's the parts I looked at. I know it kind of sounds like a soft aspect, but there's consultants that will come in. You'll pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars to find out what's on your people's minds. When sometimes taking a break in the lunchroom with them, you could have found out the same thing.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah. What other questions or comments?
Thanks, Shannon. Great question. Let's see. Melissa from Herman, any questions or thoughts on your mind that you'd like to share with Gary? And obviously, Melissa, we want to thank you for inviting Gary to this discussion. Really appreciate the work that Herman's doing. Go ahead.
Well, first, great job, Gary. Yes. Kind of makes me want to get back into HR, but probably not. I would have given anything to have had a leader in an organization and been in an HR role underneath that type of leadership philosophy. That was awesome. So Shannon stole my question. So I definitely wanted him to touch on, what a small business owner can do for their employees. And so I guess I would ask the question, how does a business get started? I mean, you talked about maybe doing a pay raise. Maybe that's not in a budget for a small company. If you were to tell a small company what they could do in the next 90 days to really make a difference in the motivation of their staff and maybe preventing somebody from leaving, what would be the couple of things that you'd tell them that could be easily done in the next 90 days?
Well, I think some of the things that you can do that is more of the tactical piece is, take a few minutes to sit down and actually look at the numbers. Do you know what your turnover rate is? It's like, hey, I lost somebody. If you've only lost one person in the last year, so now if there's only 2 of you, well, that's a lot of people. But when you're looking, take a little bit of time to have data so you can make some good database decisions on saying that I need to do something or I may not need to do something. You should always be working at making your workplace more accommodating and collaborating, because that just brings in for efficiencies and opportunities like that. But if you're looking to see, do I have a retention issue or a turnover issue, first start with the data. And then once you've kind of concluded that, hey, and again, like in this presentation, I provided some industry averages. You can get in and drill down to your state, your county, on what some of the turnovers you see, some of it by market indices. But look and see, are you above or below that? And then regardless, is that acceptable or unacceptable for you? So once you kind of made the decision that I need to do something, then it's kind of, as I was saying to Shannon, was go back first, do a little bit of listening. And that doesn't mean you have to pull in everybody, but start with a couple trusted resources. And again, that takes trust on your end to go out and say, listen, I've got some concerns. I need to understand what's going on here. And then once you start identifying, one, don't, it's that old story of don't eat the elephant all at once. Pick 1, 2, 3 things to start working on. Again, it can be any one of those, that's within your control and influence. Don't try to do 20, because that just means you'll do all of them poorly. Because it'd be much better to do 1, 2, 3 things very, very well, and see it start to generate a result versus peanut buttering it and not being able to accomplish anything. So like I said, be thoughtful, use some data, and then when you get ready to get started, limit the scope to an area such that while challenging, it's doable. Once you have a couple of quick wins, then start expanding, because you're kind of flexing those muscles and getting ready for the marathon. Then start taking on some of the larger things. If you take the biggest one on first, often once somebody gets overwhelmed and they back off of it, the tendency is not to try again. You want to always say, "Oh, I'd never give up," but sometimes it beats us. So that's why I say start out with some quick wins. Once you get some of those, then expand from there. And again, depending on how big or how small of a business you are, sometimes you may know of another again, I'm using the chamber as an example because I've done it before, but find another business that you're willing to, doesn't have to be a competitor, but it's kind of just that peer-to-peer mentoring. What are they doing? What are you doing? Because most of the time you'll find people that want to see some mutual successes.
Thank you, Gary. Ken, did you have another question? Great. Melissa, thank you for your comments. Aaron, I think you're logged in from Eldon. I'm not sure if you can comment or if you have any questions. Are you able to share your thoughts with us, Aaron? I'm just not sure if you have the capability right now. Okay, that she may not have the connection. Gary, this was such a great presentation. What obviously your passion is unbound. It shows not only in the work you do, but how you think about your employees, your business. It's almost a philosophy on how to live far beyond just HR practices. So we appreciate all the great insights you've shared. I'd like to ask you a question, maybe from a much more personal perspective. I'm a small business owner, and one of the every day I just realize how I am challenged as a small business owner to be a good HR leader. Small business leaders are janitors and marketing chiefs and CEOs, and you get to wear all the hats all the time. As you're starting, how do you balance the hiring of staff versus unloading the work? It just, this may be a really broad question, but there's a very vague struggle I have, which is, as you're starting and you're slowly building your team, you need to have the revenue to support the incremental person, but that incremental person will unload capacity from you, and trying to sort of balance all those pieces. I just don't know what that looks like. And I feel like many small businesses, going from 1 to 3 employees is a huge sort of a jump that people just have a very difficult time making. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that struggle.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think sometimes going from 1 to 3 is almost harder than going from 3 to 10 and then from 10 to 100. Especially when you're, because a part of it is establishing that inertia, of that growth and making sure that it's not so overwhelming that, sometimes you can pull the trigger on it and 10 minutes later, it's like I made the wrong call. And so now I would say that, if you wait for the perfect moment, that just means you're not going to do it. So I think there's a certain, you can probably do 70, 80% prep, but eventually it comes down to having the faith to make the change. And then once you make that change, I think it's having the constitution and wherewithal, not just financially, but that perseverance of your spirit to be able to say that, to let it remain long enough that it gets some legs under it. Because anytime you bring on somebody else, unless it's your brother-in-law, which you have to take, but if it's, if you're trying to bring on real talent to expand the scope of your business, often that sacrifice, both in revenue and time and effort and resources, is going to come out of you and divert to that person. So like I said, I think those first couple of hires is to be very thoughtful, understand and when. Because I've seen people do this before when they're trying to make those first couple of hires. Again, they're looking for perfect. It's not going to happen. So what are the attributes that you're looking for in that hire? And hopefully, if it's somebody that you know well, you already have the trust. Now you're just trying to see this, or do the skills match that? But on the flip side, in the very beginning, you've got to have somebody that's able to do the job. Plain and simple, because you don't have the luxury of a long-term development cycle. The bigger you are, hey, I can do a 90-day training period. Here, listen, I've been training with you for 2 weeks. You got to help me. So there's some people that's able to take that rate of change and some that aren't. So that's maybe some of the attributes that you're interviewing for when you're trying to find that partner. Because even in the beginning, on paper, they're an employee, but in the beginning, they're partners because their success, it has an immediate impact, sometimes that same week impact on your ability to be successful. So I think looking at that, but once you, like I said, you're going to kind of get the amount of trust you're going to give. And but I think having those unbound conversations with that new person is critical in the beginning. Being able to share, like you're taking your hopes and dreams of this business. It's the first time I've done it, or maybe the 50th. But I think those personal elements but I think the abilities and stuff like that are paramount in being able to make that a successful step. Use your heart, but you got to put some thought and put your gut into it a little bit as well.
Well, Gary, that was incredibly powerful insights. You shared really, I love that point around the initial hires need to be highly capable, who can immediately create value. I think that certainly resonates very well. So, Gary, I know we're at the top of the hour here, and you've been incredibly generous with your time. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. Your insights hopefully will be really helpful to other individuals that are listening to the conversation. Gary, one of the things we'd like to, don't want to take too much of your time, but if someone has specific questions, would it be okay if in some phased manner they could reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm very transparent. You're welcome to share my contact information with the group, with the team, or if somebody else says, hey, I'd like to talk to this guy, anytime. Like I said, just tell them to give me a jingle. You've got my mobile number, my email. They can reach out anytime, and I'll help any way I can.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Gary. You have a wonderful day, and we just not only did you have great insights, just the way you told the story was really awesome as well. So Gary, thank you, and just want to let everyone know next month we have Tammy Long, who's the director with the Missouri Chamber Federation. She'll be joining us and talking about how small business leaders can best take advantages of the Chamber's health insurance plan. So that will be a great conversation as well. Thank you, Chamber leaders. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for everyone who joined us today. We appreciate your time. We appreciate you. Have a great day, week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for your time.
Take care.
All right.